Welcome to the Pacific Northwest Farmers Cooperative Market Report. Today we're going to cover the WASDE Supply and Demand Report, and I'd like to welcome Trudi and Shane and myself, Randy. So, Trudi, we need a little disclaimer.
Yes, just a little housekeeping here. Disclaimer, the views and opinions of this program are of the hosts and are for informational purposes only. There is substantial risk and loss in trading futures and options, which you should carefully consider prior to trading.
Okay, well, I'm going to jump right into it. You know, we had on June 12th, the WASDE report came out, and what kind of surprise did you see today on that report, Trudy?
Yeah, everybody was going into that report kind of thinking it was going to be a sleeper, and it really was. There wasn't a ton of surprises, and I mean that by the numbers were really within what the industry was thinking about. So I guess the only couple of points that I put on surprises, or not surprises, just that the U.S. ending stocks for 24-25 crop and also for 25-26 corn, soybeans, and wheat were really kind of base neutral from what the expectations were. And then you go into world stocks, and I would say that a little more on the bullish side for corn and wheat and pretty neutral on soybeans, at least on the 12th.
That is true. Well, you know, what I picked up from it, too, is that they really kind of picked on Russia. They decreased it down. Their carryovers are over 10 million metric tons, and that's the lowest they've seen since, 20? And so I got some people excited that maybe, they sold too much wheat and maybe their crop's not as good, and they're trying to hedge their bets coming this month, or for the next report that comes out. As far as, any notables, on this report, it was, like I say, it was sleeper. I was expecting to see a little bit more adjustments being done. I think they got the yields kind of off, but they kicked it down the road.
Yeah, I think it's pretty typical that not a huge amount of adjustment in this June report. They did no change for, I think the notable for me was there was no change in the for corn and soybeans for the South American production. And, you couldn't read an article or go a day without some, number being ratcheted higher on that South American crop. So I do think that USDA will change that number, but they didn't do. They left, I think it was like 130 million or something like that for our tons for that production. So that was a little bit meh. And then I guess the only other thing I had was that we expected maybe some adjustment in the wheat column, and they did do that as far as increasing new crop wheat exports by 25 million, which lowered the ending stocks to 898. So that's notable, and I think probably warranted.
Right, but the market was kind of expecting it.
Yeah.
They also decreased corn by 50 million, which was kind of a little bit of surprise. But you think about how much this corn's being sold, I guess it wasn't too much. But I really think this July report's really going to have all eyes are going to be on it. You've got weather in the Midwest, Oklahoma, Kansas crop seems to be a little bit slower harvest progression because of rain, and then. You're also looking at a lot of carryover. So is off quality really going to be a big issue for us this year? At this point in time, I'm not expecting it to be so, but you never know.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that corn number increase on exports wasn't higher because, I think that you're going to see, and maybe when you talk about that July report, that's going to be it because I think that number should be higher. And, how they ramp into that, they'll probably do a big adjustment again in July. So.
Right. When they talk about yields, they left all the wheat numbers unchanged, by class. And, out here it's a little bit drier, right? And so we're definitely not going to be the trend line yields like we were last year. The Midwest is probably a little wetter, so it'll probably be better. And then they got a big corn yield for corn already. Mm-hmm. If they change that or not, well, I guess we'll see. But.
Right. And typically you won't see such a huge adjustment in the yield yet for July WASDE, but what does come up at the end of this month is planted acres report and quarterly stocks report. So does USDA make a number change there to start being in line and rightfully so. You've had a couple more weeks of weather and outlook for this corn crop coming, so you could see a weird number there or
Right.
a bigger adjustment.
Well, that's a good point too, because in Dakotas, when it's dry and it was early, they got it in early. We had a planter out there with my family. I mean, they planted a lot more corn than beans, and they're really hoping for it. And it was mainly an insurance driven, decision.
Right.
But still, if you got the weather, you got to go for it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, we're going to switch over and let Sean kind of touch base on Friday's EPA proposals for a requirement on percent of renewable fuel standards, which is RFS. Could you explain that to us?
Yeah, so what this is the amount of biofuels that are to be made from U.S. commodities or just any cellulose-based oil, soybeans, canola oil, ethanol. So there's kind of projections that they've tried to get to. The EPA kind of rolled out, or administration bumped their number up to a 5.36, that would be billion U.S. gallons. So definitely higher. The originally projected number was 3.35, so definitely causing a little bit of bullish stance on soy oil. Definitely we've seen it limit up on Friday. It gapped up again this morning and is limit up again today on Monday. So definite bullish news on the soybean oil side of things.
Well, that's got to be good for canola too, as well, isn't it?
It is. It's definitely taken us with there. And then along with the Iranian-Israel conflict with the Strait of Hormuz is definitely kind of putting some bullish tones on getting this thing up and away.
Okay.
So we'll see. They have open comment until the end of August, I believe, and then the EPA is to truly decide come October. There was talk previously about taking off products from countries other than U.S., and it sounds like today's note was that they're just going to give a premium to U.S. products, to the refiners. So incentivize refiners using used cooking oil or soybean oil or any of that from U.S. products. So it seems like that's how they're going to handle that situation.
So you're saying premium to the U.S. versus having more regulations on what could be imported from a foreign country, because that was part of that. From what I read a little bit, was changing the how much they actually would allow as far as imported oils or that being used or being able to be called the RINs. And,
Yep. There was a big tiff, and I read only a couple articles, so it could be a rumor, but it sounds like China was purchasing Malaysian palm oil that hadn't been ever used for cooking oil, and then putting their stamp on it and sending it to us as quote unquote used refiner. Yeah.
But that's definitely a rumor mill, right?
That was a rumor mill.
Okay,
so
you got to be careful.
Yeah. Go back to our disclaimer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there was something to be said about the RINs with renewable identification numbers and how they look at that and what is allowed or being part of the program. And one of the things was when they were calculating the change, this for the biomass diesel, base diesel, that was it was a billion gallons higher than what everybody was kind of expecting, and that's why we saw that just
Huge
limit
blow
up
up.
in that huge rally on Friday. I thought that was that's a lot, a billion gallons.
This was a big number.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, now we're going to go through a market outlook, and this is where we're going to kind of take a stab on what we see the futures are going to go. I'm going to put Trudi on the spot here, and she's going to guarantee to be right. And so, where do you think this market's going, Trudi?
Well, kind of just some of the things that we've been, looking at and talking about too is, with energy prices surging here a little bit and all this, tensions between Israel and Iran. And, it seems to me like the market, you use the word war now, and we no longer, that doesn't move the market. I mean, and so I guess until you have some sort of disruption in the shipping channel, like we saw when Russia and Ukraine actually, when Russia invaded Ukraine, future, we were all concerned about if we could ever move product, and futures were through the roof. Now we don't see that happening. Not to say that with this Iran and Israel, call it a war, conflict, whatever it is, it seems to be escalating. So, at some point in time, there could be some some disruptions. Right now it's all talk about fertilizer prices and the increasing of that, so that's certainly going to weigh on things. But in the wheat complex, the one thing that I thought was kind of interesting when we were talking about the corn and the wheat, I think that old crop corn number is, we've had some pretty strong demand on that corn number, and we still see wheat being traded as feed instead of milling quality. And you're right now in that seasonal time frame and right now the weather output looks really good. So we've got this bigger corn crop coming, and if everything is great in July when it's tasseling and all the heat that's needed, things in the outlook looks really good. Certainly we've talked about there's issues. The northern tier maybe still being a little dry, but you also have rain in the forecast. So I'm going to go. My projection is a long way around. My projection is that I think we're going to be in some seasonal downtrend right now, unless you see unless weather disruptions, lack of demand. But right now things look pretty traditional. This is the time frame where you start to see that market decrease a little bit because of increased supplies. And
When you got new crop harvest coming.
right, you got new crop coming. Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, they should be well into harvest. They're not. We have some delays, so then you can go into some quality issues, and those will come eventually. But right now, I still think until your weather model changes, we're going to be kind of in a seasonal downtrend. Now, I don't think it's going to be I think we're going to be supported well enough because there's that strong corn demand. I don't think things are going to just fall off the edge, but you could see things slip a little bit here. Cash, futures on all wheat.
I agree with you. I think corn's going to be the floor to our market. Things that really make me nervous is how many corn acres are going to come in, how much production we're going to have. What's that corn crop going to look like? The other thing when I look at white wheat, especially in the Pacific Northwest, we've been really dry. Mm-hmm. And, I've been driving around and, wheat's turning blue, and that's not a good thing in June. We'd like to, at least see it turn brown, when it's all headed out and ripe. But we could have some quality issues with Australia. They're a little dry as well. And so with, the trade deal we have with China, is phase one going to come back, in 20, when that phase one kicked in, they bought a lot of white wheat from the PNW, which was a huge benefit to us. But, if we don't have the quality per se that they want, China is generally just the cheapest wheat buyer anyway, no matter what. And back in 20, we were the cheapest wheat. Will that continue or not is kind of, up in the air. But, production numbers, we got our routine customers that are always going to buy our white wheat from us. But I think the market's kind of accepted a little bit higher protein over 21 when we had those issues there. So countries like, Taiwan, Korea,
Mm-hmm.
They've been able to at least digest it a little bit. So I don't know if that's going to be as big a factor as it was in 21, but it's just something to worry about.
Yeah, I still think there's a lot of that the winter planted white wheat is in really good condition. There's some spring stuff that, maybe depending when it was planted and when the June rains come, if they come, they're going to maybe have some production issues. But I think overall, white wheat's going to be okay quality-wise. Yields, probably average. I don't think we're going to have a been busting crop, but I think they're going to be average and
you're probably right there.
The market's going to
and the temperatures have cooled down, and we get some showers in the forecast. So, but I guess I got that farmer gene in me being raised on the farm. It's always darkest before the dawn, I guess. But
I also thought it was interesting. There's been a lot of talk, not only with China's production, wheat, all grains, but also that they're their slowdown on their consumer use of all products, and even grains and rice and wheat and all these things. And so it kind of makes you wonder out there in the news, things are things really have slowed? Is this kind of a preset up to in this trade negotiation?
The wheat imports are down 83% year over year. That's a lot.
Yeah. So is this part of that negotiations? So that is Randy's spot on. It's a huge thing in these trade deals that's going on, and the other countries too with tariffs and getting that figured out. That's really going to help iron out demand. The market doesn't like uncertainty. We can trade a number that we know, and that certainly will will help things once we kind of get things a little more concrete, if that's the right term or not. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Buy the rumor, sell the fact.
exactly.
Right? Where do you think canola's going, Shane?
If we keep this program going off with the refiner oils, the weakening U.S. dollar, strengthening Canadian dollar, we're pushing 21 on a little bit of fur off. I think we could get 21, 22. I think there might be another dollar in this thing, pretty easily with just what we've seen here in the last couple of weeks. Yeah.
You realize when you say 21, 22, they're going to want 23, 24.
I know. That's why I'm trying to hedge my bet here.
So when did you say that on this EPA biofuels thing? When was there?
October. Sometime in October, towards the end, I believe, is when the final decision and that number is finalized that they pushed out.
Yeah.
So, it's definitely going to pay to hold on to it a little bit. There's a pretty good carry in the market right now that's paying storage, so definitely have guys look at that.
And they have a drought, at least forecasts are, you watch Snodgrass, he says it's really dry in Canada. So, that's going to be a big factor for us as well. And their acres are down in Canada. That could also help us out quite a bit as well.
Yep. There's definitely a couple, bullish notes that are coming out. We should have another Canadian Stats Canada here in the next 2 weeks, I believe. So we'll get updated numbers just like the WASDE and go from there. But definitely short crop this year.
Okay. Well, we're going to come to the conclusion here. So closing thoughts, where I'm at right now, I'm kind of in a sit and wait and see mode. We really haven't been buying all that much new crop right now. It's really hard to tell people to sell at these lower price levels, especially with the potential maybe a little less production. I'd like to, like I say, wait and see. We got, Trump's telling us we're supposed to have at least 30 trade deals happen here in the next 10 to 20 days. If that happens, what's that going to mean? Is that going to pick up our exports or not? If the deals get done or not? So I'm kind of, playing it. Let's wait and see what the July report's going to be. But I realize, in July we're going to be cutting wheat. So I better hurry up and do something because the boat might be leaving town before I make a decision.
Yeah, true that.
How about you, Trudi?
Yeah, I think, we're going to continue to see that sideways choppy trade, like I talked earlier, kind of that seasonal downtrend. Strong exports for corn is going to help wheat. I think even if we're talking in the feed grains and white meat going in the feed grains, it's going to keep things supported. We've been very range bound. I don't see us breaking out of that as long as, because there's enough concern globally. I think those global prices have remained fairly firm. So with that, I think that, we're going to have some sort of production issue globally to really push us over the numbers where we have been trading, because this has been a tradable number depending on where that corn number comes in. So that old crop, new crop corn spread is going to be something really to watch. It could give us some direction on where wheat goes, but right now I'd say not bullish, but I think, I'm not bearish either. I really think that we're supported here, and I think it has good reason to be trading here and potential to go higher for sure.
Shane?
I'm in the same boat. We're going sideways. Until we can get somebody on board to buy some of this stuff, I think we're definitely solid footed here. Yeah, 10 cents up, down. Yeah.
I think you're spot on, Trudy. I think corn's going to be our floor. And if that corn number goes down, or the price, we're going to go down with it. We got to compete. We got a lot of stocks in the United States, and we need to get rid of them. Right now we're still carrying over 50% of the winter wheat crop from last year. That's going to be tough. But, demand's everything. If they come in and start buying it, we're going to be sitting good. So, well, thank you, everybody. And that concludes our report.
Thank you.
Thank you.